Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com, debatephysics.com also, video presentation. Yes, it's about dumb physics. Yeah, that's right. Dishonest, crooked, fail, stupid, bad physics, frankly. Just bad science. Scientists who really are, got their heads up their butts and just talk a bunch of crap, okay? They've been taught how to lie and they do it pretty well. And, so physicist Michael is today's piece of human garbage that I'll deal with. He's just such a phony, just so bad in terms of, he'll directly acknowledge what he's arguing with. Okay, so he has this phony bullshit video up where he's going to debunk some kind of misconception. Now, he won't show us anybody with this misconception. He's not going to show a single video or any kind of information indicating where he says this misconception is blighting the internet or anyone's understanding of reality. So it's a bullshit man. It's a straw man argument, setting up bullshit arguments. And so subtle, hidden way inside of this video is some sort of crap, okay, that doesn't, that the force of gravity, if you're fighting it, that is, if you go up against gravity, it doesn't take any energy. It doesn't matter how long or slow you travel a distance. So he's basically arguing that if NASA took its time to lift its rockets to space, it wouldn't cost it more fuel. That's his argument. It really is his argument, okay? And it's just nonsense. You have to do more than just equal the force of gravity to continue your voyage, because frankly the fact is the gravity is a constant force, and if you're going to fight it, it's going to be more than the force of just sitting in it. Just sitting, not at the same work. There's a difference between going up the stream and sitting in one place in the stream. So if you had a motorboat, I guess I'll just draw it all. The hell with it. I'll draw his experiment and I'll draw what he's arguing, and because that's all that really matters here. I mean, that's the subject. And I just show how he cheats the data. He cheats the whole experiment. It's just a big pile of cheat, okay, to prove something that's ludicrous and stupid. Which is just ironic. That's what science does. And of course, he threw in some lies about Newton. Newton didn't say 1/2 mv squared. It's not Newton's formula. It's not Newton's idea. He didn't even say F equals ma. What he said is that you want to go twice as fast, you apply twice the force. You want to go 3 times as fast, you apply 3 times the force. That's what he said. He said force equals the change in your momentum. You change your momentum, there's a force that did it, and the two things are proportional. Damn it, are equal. Shit. Fucking freezing goddamn computer. Alright, trying again. See if I can get this computer to keep working for a change. Alright, so we don't need this, and we will go to this. Alright, so he's doing one of his silly little experiments that he's claiming he's going to prove with his data, something. And so it's a really simple experiment, right? You're just basically saying here's a weight, alright, and you're going to have a string on it, and you're going to pull the weight against gravity and measure how much force you have to apply to make it go against the gravity. It's not that complicated. And what did he do? Oh, well, he adds a pulley for absolutely no reason, right? I mean, just somebody could just tell me, why would you do it this way when you could just hold the thing right here and pull it up with your hand? It's going to be the same amount of motion. You're not changing how much motion you're not changing how much you have to move at all. It's the same exact action. What's the pulley for? Oh, well, this is called dampening. Okay, so when you put something into an experiment that's just superfluous, it's basically there just to screw it up, just to ruin the results, because this is going to be doing a whole bunch of different things that are just going to it's going to take a signal like this and turn it into this. That's what dampening does. Okay, it takes all of the action out because this thing can't do things really quickly. It can't go forward, back, forward, back, forward. It can't do little jittery motions because it ends up having its own momentum. It's like a gyroscope. A gyroscope evens everything out, and gyroscopes move kind of smoothly is because they're taking all of the action out and blending it all together over time. So that's the first easy critique, is that, well, why doesn't he just hold the thing with the force sensor and see how much force it takes to move something against gravity? Right? That would be the simple thing to do. All right, so his argument basically is, I apply an acceleration, then I don't do anything for this whole motion, and then there's a deceleration, obviously. When I stop applying any force to compensate for gravity, I stop pulling it up. So he's saying first that there's some misconception somebody has that it works some other way, when of course not. Nobody's making that argument. But the argument I will make is that no, you can't just apply an acceleration and then apply a perfect amount of force against gravity and have the acceleration continue in the upward direction. Now, if you're going sideways against gravity, yeah, you could. Okay, but going up against gravity, it's going to decrease your velocity. You're not going to coast. So he called this coasting. There's no such thing as coasting up against gravity. All right, so I will use a different analogy to explain his rubbish. All right, so what he got is data. All right, just understand. It's just so bad. He cheated so egregiously. So he drew this, like this is what it's going to do. Okay, it's going to accelerate and then it's going to decelerate, and everything will be the same in here. All right, and it's not what the data shows. Okay, the data shows that the signal coming in is like this, then there is this going up, and then there's a huge amount of action here. Okay, it's not like it got simpler, it got complicated. Okay, and then it goes down. Okay, so he's just denying the fact that, and that's with the pulley. Without the pulley, this gets even more dramatic. Okay, in the sense that the net effect is that you have to keep applying a little bit of extra force, or you're not going to maintain your velocity. Your acceleration will not create a coasting velocity if you're going against gravity. All right, and so look, the simple argument is the rocket ship. I mean, come on, get real. So he's arguing that NASA could just give the rocket an impulse here at the beginning, give it an acceleration, and that's it. That's all it has to do. Just turn the engines off, or put the engines just at low enough to be equal to gravity. So 9.8 meters per second. So let's say we have a rocket and we zoom it up to, it's exactly 9.8. All right, so we got the rocket and it's just sitting there, a foot off the ground, because we're applying just enough thrust to keep it in one place. So we're fighting gravity. We got just enough thrust to push the rocket up, and then we add a little extra boost. So we just shoot a little extra exhaust, give it a little tiny velocity. He's saying that little tiny 1 minute, I give 1 minute of thrust, let's say 30 seconds. I give it a little tiny bit of velocity with a little bit of thrust, and as long as I keep the 9.8 engine on, the one that's compensating for gravity, it'll just coast all the way into space. No, it won't do that. Okay, so that's just nonsense. Absolute garbage. Okay, don't happen. If it did happen, NASA would do it. Because, gee, that would be so easy on the fuel budget. All the rocket has to do is produce exactly 9.8, and it could just slowly rise up to space. Because it'll just coast there for free. So it don't happen. It's not Newton's theory. Okay, so I'll analogize it a little different just to make it really easy to understand for even the dopies. Okay? Do you have a brain that can manage 10-year-old physics? Do you? All right, so I have a stream. The stream is moving this way. It doesn't matter. It's a constant amount of water, a constant rate of stream flow. You have a boat, okay. And so you can have it tied to an anchor, okay, and so it's just fine. Doesn't do anything. Now you're going to untie it. It's not going to be on an anchor anymore. So you have to turn on a motor, okay? And so you turn on the motor, and now you can release the anchor, and you've turned on the motor, and you're producing exactly the same force. So we'll just say 9.8 just for fun. So there's 9.8 coming down this way, okay? and you're applying 9.8 force in the opposite direction, your boat is staying right there. Okay, it's not going downstream, because you're applying just enough force to compensate for the stream's energy. And then you decide, well, let's give it a kick. So I have a little kicking device. Okay, I have a little thing, a lever on a spring, let's say. All right, and I just give it a kick. Okay, so I have a little string, I release the lever, it gives my boat a little kick. So I give it a little extra. Okay, so now it's got some forward motion. It's got some acceleration. Okay, so it's going to be going, instead of 9.8 of compensating force, now I have an extra, let's say 2 velocity. Okay, I'm now giving it a little bit of velocity. Well, the fact is I'm going upstream. Okay, and that 2 velocity with the same little, I still have the 9.8 motor on, and I have a 2 velocity, but I'm going against the stream now. So I'm hitting more water because I'm going against the stream, kind of obviously. And that 2 velocity is going to wear out. Even though I have the little compensating motor, the 2 velocity isn't going to sustain me because I'm moving into the stream. I'm moving upstream. To keep going upstream, it's more over time, it's consuming my velocity. So I'm going to run out of velocity. Just like if you launch something from the Earth, it doesn't keep going, right? I can launch something at 2,000 miles an hour into, shooting it up into space, and what happens? The gravity consumes it all. I can't keep going. So we know it's not going to be a constant velocity. Okay, you're not going to go a constant velocity. I give you 2v here. You're going to end up going about, this far, and the 2v runs out because the extra gravity you're running into is going to consume it. So no more free velocity, and then you're back to just having your capacity to resist the stream, and you go back to standing still again. So this motor's always on. The 9.8 motor's always on. I give you a little push. The push isn't forever. You're going to have to keep pushing more. You're going to have to keep adding a little bit of fuel, a little more than 9.8 if you want to get up the stream. And the fact is the faster you can get up the stream, the less energy you'll use. And that's easily illustrated, right? So this doctor of physics doesn't understand that if I go, if I go across a stream, these morons don't understand. Say I just want to go across the stream. I want to go from here to here. So the stream's moving this way at 9.8. All right, I just want to go from here to here, and I only have, a certain amount of fuel I can use to jolt me across. Okay, and I have to hit here. I can't hit down here. I have to get here. And if I'm heading down this way, I have to use energy to push me back so I hit here. I have to go from point A to a point B on the other side. That's my objective. And the simple rule is, basically is if I can get across the stream quickly, then less of the stream can hit me. So this is like a rain argument or paint sprayer or any kind of argument you want to come up with. And you can logically understand that the faster I get across the stream, the less I'm going to have to put a compensating force this way to undo the fact that I'm going to get pushed this way. So we know that if I swim as fast as I can, or I shoot this object across the stream really fast, it'll go really close to point B. And I'll only have to apply a little tiny bit of energy this way to hit point B. But if I go slow, if I launch myself slower and slower, the more I'm going to get bent. The more I'm going to get bent. The slower I go, the more I'm going to get bent, and the more energy I'm going to have to use to get myself back to where I want to be, which is point B. So the more energy I'm going to have to use to fight the force, the longer I take in the force. The more time I'm spending fighting the force, the more force I'm going to have to fight. Okay, because it's a volume of force constantly falling. And gravity is the same way. It's a volume of force constantly falling. 9.8 meters of velocity per 1 second. Not per seconds. Not per 1 seconds. Not per second squared. It's just 9.8. That's it. That's Newton's physics. Leibniz's physics is squaring crap. Okay, so they're so dishonest. None of these dishonest, lying sacks of shit will say they're Leibnizians. They just keep lying that somehow Newton covers this. Newton doesn't cover this. Newton didn't believe this. They're lying about a dead icon. You know, they're basically calling Newton a pedophile. Newton's worst enemy in life, Leibniz. They're saying Newton is Leibniz. They're slandering Newton, you know, by putting up Leibniz's picture. It's disgusting. All right, so let's see. Do I need to say any more? I mean, doesn't this figure? Can't you figure this out? The faster I get across, the less stream water I have to deal with. The slower I go, the more stream water that's going to hit me. So think of it as wind. All right. So let's just say it's wind blowing, and I'm going to go across a pond. So let's just say this is a pond, and I want to get across the pond. So the pond isn't doing anything, but the wind is blowing. You can't figure out that the faster you get from point A to point B, the less the wind is going to blow you down the pond to this other point C over here. And you're trying to avoid going to point C, okay? There's a liar there, a lying physicist. All right, you don't want to go there. It's disgusting and creepy. So you want to get to point B, and you only have a little bit of energy. So you want to save your energy. You got to go as fast as you can across this stream. Now, obviously, you could aim upstream and let the stream push you in an advantageous direction, and that'll solve part of your problem. But the straight line is the best route. If you can get there really fast, you'll do almost no work. If NASA could launch rockets, okay, with an insanely high velocity right from the Earth, you know, if it could store up the energy and shoot them at a huge velocity and avoid the gravity, the fact is it'll do less net work. So in this experiment where he gets these little jittery lines, there is obviously there's something that continues. The constant force has to, the constant pushing, you know, of this little motor that keeps you from, well, I should do the against argument for the little motor. It's not enough. You're going to have to keep adding force. Like again, the NASA rocket can't go, let's just say, you know, it goes 1 mile an hour faster, okay, than just meeting the gravity. So it goes a little tiny bit faster than standing still. It can't do that for free. It can't just coast at 1 mile an hour. Can't do it. There's no coasting. You're going upstream, you're not coasting. Okay, you're constantly fighting the force. And so it's just a nonsense argument. I don't know. Do I need to go into... I'm going to make another video where I go into the paint sprayer, and I'll go into, you know, all the examples that are the inverse square law, that are just like gravity, and demonstrate it's a time-dependent force. I mean, it's really just about how much time you're in the wind decides how much wind your boat collects, okay? And how much wind it collects decides how much force it collected. And it'll decide how hard it'll crash into your pier. All right, the hammer and the feather falling in gravity. The hammer's collecting a ton of energy because it has a ton of mass. The feather's barely collecting any energy because it's got a tiny amount of mass. And when they hit the ground, you can expect the hammer to do a lot of damage because it collected a lot of rain, so to speak, because it has a big rain catcher, big mass. And the feather won't do much at all because it didn't collect much rain, doesn't have much force that it collected. I mean, it's just so obvious. It's a time-dependent force. All constant forces, all things that happen at a constant rate, okay, are time-dependent. That's what the rate part means. And they've completely broken that physics by squaring a second, which is retarded, frankly. It's dumber than a 10-year-old. A 10-year-old knows that per second doesn't mean second squared. Even a 10-year-old could figure out that that doesn't make any sense. Something that can happen any number of seconds, I should just square it? That'll give me the right answer somehow. So if it happens 10 seconds, I just square the seconds. You know, whatever. I square a second. I square 7 seconds. I square 15 seconds. Why would I do that? It only happened 15 seconds. It didn't happen 15 seconds squared. Yeah. Anyway, too stupid. And again, it goes right back to the whole thing. They believe, they assert that it's an absolute frickin' fact that it takes 100 times the wattage to spin a motor 10 times faster. It doesn't take 10 times the wattage. It takes 100 times the wattage to spin a motor 10 times faster. That's their physics. That's their science. Too stupid. And they're too arrogant, too obnoxious, too pig-headed, too scurvy, too schemy, too connivey as human beings to admit the fucking truth that they're bet on the wrong horse. They bet on a gerbil. Okay, it's a bad science. 1/2 mv squared is just garbage. It was invented by a guy who never even did an experiment, frankly. He never dropped 4 pounds 1 foot and then dropped 1 pound 4 feet and proved in some way that the 1 pound going 4 feet is the same force. And they still haven't demonstrated that. That's what it started with. Nonsense. And then they just built on the nonsense. And for all this time, 300 years of a nonsense theory, and they've never proven any of it. They've never proven it takes 4 times the energy to go twice as fast. They haven't proven that it takes 9 times the energy to go 3 times as fast. They haven't proven that it takes 16 times the energy to go 4 times as fast. I mean, I could just keep going. You can get to 1,000 times the energy to go 100. You can just keep, to keep going with these extraordinarily preposterous numbers. It's garbage. It's science. So anyway, till the next time and such. So it's enough of a video. Oh, I should play some of this. So let me just play his little rag here at the end, where he subtly implies that there's somebody who believes different than him, and see, I've proven him wrong. I've proven that gravity, that it's completely irrelevant. Once you have coasting speed, you don't have to worry about the gravity. You can coast in any direction you want, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to add any more energy. I've proven it with my pulley thingy.
Was coasting upwards at higher or lower speeds, or even coasting downward.
I should put the video on, so I'll do that. On, please, on. Come on, there it goes.
The force of tension matched the force of gravity.
So again, he says you didn't have to add any more force. So once you give it an impulse, it'll just keep going as long as you have a little putt-putt engine that does 9.8 meters per second. You won't have to do any more work. You're all done doing any work. So NASA could have just a little tiny bit of fuel and just go poof, poof the rocket into space. Because it could just take its time and coast at 1 mile an hour. No problem.
In those coasting cases?
So there's no such thing as coasting upstream. Bullshit.
The acceleration is 0, which means the net force is 0.
So your deceleration is not 0. You are, in fact, decelerating as you're going up the stream. And the fact is, if you don't add any extra energy, you will not continue to go upstream.
Which means those two individual forces balance each other out.
So it don't happen. That's nonsense.
As an aside, we also demonstrated that the force of gravity acting on an object does not depend on how fast that object is moving.
All right, so he didn't do that at all. So it's all a canard and a lie. All right, so first he used the pulley to destroy the data, okay, to dampen it out. So there's less jitter in the data. And the fact is you can experience this just by holding something against gravity. You will feel your arms start to shudder and all this stuff happens. And it happens because the force of gravity is constantly moving down and the force of the earth is constantly moving up. And those things, those motions are really hard to balance. Because at any one moment you could be going up, you could be feeling less pressure and pushing up. Any one moment you could feel more pressure the other way, pushing down, you're forced, and you're totally not balanced with the actual forces that are constantly changing. You're constantly, pieces of you right now sitting in a chair, pieces of you are pushing into the earth at the same time other pieces of you are pushing up. That's the fact. You are bouncing in the gravity. And this silly, stupid cheat experiment didn't prove otherwise. It in fact proved exactly that. His data showed that the force is nice and even in the beginning, and then as soon as you start lifting something, the force starts going quite eccentric. It goes up and down a lot, and that's with the pulley in the experiment. Take the pulley out and it's going to be even more jittery.
You know, in case anyone out there is mistakenly making that claim.
Okay, so he's saying that anyone who thinks a rocket needs to be constantly accelerated to be able to fight gravity, they're wrong. That they could actually lift rockets by just shooting them up into the air at 1 mile an hour, and they could save a ton of fuel.
We did this for a range of coasting velocities.
So there is no coasting. Again, it's just a complete misnomer, a fake, and a fraud. The only reason why it looks a little bit coasty is because the pulley has momentum. It's a little gyroscope, essentially. When you start rotating the pulley ends up with momentum. It's creating friction on the string, and it's basically saying, I don't like to change direction. That's what the pulley's saying. So if you need a direction change, it's going to take me a while to do it because I'm not interested in doing any direction changes. So all I can do is do acceleration. I can do velocity changes, but I can't really do direction changes. Pulleys aren't going to go jerkity, 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 jerkity around. Okay, they're just going to kind of smooth it all out.
From around 1.5 meters per second up to around 1.5 meters per second going down, which...
And again, I could show, look, I'll show some of his data. Like I said, he decides to grab this piece of data. He decides to create, and he just eliminates the part that was way eccentric. So he conformed his selection of data to his purpose. All right, so you could also see that's part of the fraud here. He didn't account for the entire acceleration needed. And again, he's dampening the acceleration using the pulley.
Is around a kind of a brisk walking pace. It's not super fast, so I couldn't make this thing move up or down a lot faster than that without risking breaking the apparatus. But again...
You didn't need the apparatus. That's the whole point, right? Didn't need the pulley. Could have just lifted it up. It's just there's absolutely nothing stopping him from just lifting the mass up. Same experiment would have been done just fine, and you would have gotten real data instead of fake data.
With that range of velocities, we found no evidence whatsoever for any change in the gravitational force.
The force doesn't change, but the fact is you're moving into more of it. So you're going to get more of it. Just if I move towards the sun, I'm going to collect more photons. Just a fact.
So keep that in mind next time someone makes that claim.
All right, so just nonsense. So he's such a coward. So he is directly talking to my claims, and he's so much of a coward. He can't even sit there and say, yes, I'm arguing with this guy. You can call me a fanatic, call me whatever you want. All right, but he doesn't even have the decency to make his argument up front and honestly. He's pretending there's somebody else on the internet arguing against Leibniz. No, that's me, right? There isn't anybody else, unfortunately, okay, because you're all dupes and fools. It's not my fault, but that's what you really are, okay? And you demonstrate that you really don't have the goods because you can't even engage in the argument in an upfront, direct way. You can't directly say, well, look, okay, yeah, I can't prove it takes 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast because that's silly. So, but yeah, I can do all these other little rickety experiments. And now he's claimed he's going to do this pendulum experiment 3 months ago, and we still don't see it. So, when is that going to happen? When you make your free momentum. So this is what he claims will happen. So this is the next thing we're waiting for. So he's promised it. So let's see. He really should produce it. He shouldn't evade and run away. He's made the big claim. So let him stake his little stupid, idiotic reputation on this frickin' retarded nonsense, garbage, silly, stupid frickin' physics that he's defending. Stand up. You're going to make these claims that somebody else is wrong, then you ought to be able to prove it, with real evidence, not this fake, phony, Well, I'll dampen all the data out of the experiment. All right, I'll pause. Fix the problem with Newton's cradles. They do get tangled. All right, I believe I fixed the problem. Okay, so the simple argument is you can do this, and you can see how much energy is in this system. The energy goes from one side to the other. It's clearly just that momentum. The momentum you put in is all there is. That's all there is. Okay, equal coming out that went in, essentially, right? Where obviously the forces aren't with us here. His claim is that if I glue these three things together so that they have to move as one object, and I do exactly the same thing, that I'll create 150 momentum in this direction and 50 in this direction. So I will double the amount of action in the universe. So merely by gluing these three things together, I will double the momentum of that system. I'll give it double momentum by just gluing these three things together. And then they'll come back together again, this with 150 coming in from this side, 50 coming in from this side, and that car crash that has 200 momentum in it will only have 100 momentum pop out. That's all they'll come out. So two things go in with a total of 200 momentum, and he thinks it's good physics, it's good for you to think that it's possible that I can make only 100 pop out and I can destroy the other 100. That's his physics. It's nonsense, it's creepy, it's stupid, it isn't the truth. And he's mocking other people in a sense. He's calling them misconceptioners, okay, because they don't believe his fable. And it's just that, a fable. He's never researched the history. He doesn't know crap about Leibniz. He doesn't know who Newton was, because obviously he's slandering him. I mean, obviously Newton did not believe what you believe. He did not believe it was mv squared that was conserved. That is not Newton's theory. And you shouldn't keep lying about Newton. Newton didn't say 9.8 meters per second squared. That is not Newton's theory. There is no squared function. The gravitational force is not a squared function. And it is completely time dependent in the sense that he was clearly stating how long you apply the force will decide the rate, okay, at which you're going to have to apply a counterforce. And it was clearly cut to that. The rate, the momentum, okay? And so obviously if you're just talking about a net amount of time, the simple thing that you could reduce his formula to was a simple statement. It basically just said the change in your momentum will be the force. Period. The two things are the same thing. The force is essentially equal to momentum. So if you apply a force that has a momentum, that's how much it's going to change your momentum. Momentum is what's transferred and it's what's conserved in the universe, not kinetic energy. All the space stuff proves it. He's really a space, his doctorate is in the silly, universe crap. So he should understand that KE doesn't work out there. But anyway, enough. This is just so ragged that these people can't make stand-up arguments. If you're going to claim it's not a time-dependent force, then explain how paint sprayers work. Why doesn't everything get the same amount of paint on it no matter how much time it sits in the paint if it's not a time-dependent force? How come I get more sunburned if I spend more time in the sun? If it's not a time-dependent force, if time doesn't matter. It's just too ridiculous. All right, till the next time and such. So forth and whatnot. Oh, that's right. I was going to show some of his little charts. So let's see if we can do that. His data collection. His fake, phony, fraudy data collection. Okay. So there we have a chart anyway. Let's see. There we have some crap on it. Okay, so in this case, let's see if you can see this. Yeah, you can see that well enough. You can see that this is the force being applied. So you're applying a force against gravity. So you're holding something steady. And he calls this part coasting. Now, can you see how coasting doesn't look like this? Coasting looks kind of a mess. I mean, it looks a little more complicated, doesn't it? And obviously, depending on what you select here, you'll get a different average number. Okay. But the real point is the pulley is what's creating this line. That's, if without the pulley, this line would be even more jagged. And clearly, I would argue that it would demonstrate that there's no such thing as coasting, that you're going to have to apply a little bit more than just the force of gravity to keep going. You can't keep going without continuing to apply an extra force. Without a little extra force, your velocity is going to die. Okay, and that's the truth. You're going to consume it because you're moving against the force. And moving against the force is more work than staying steady with the force. Moving against the force requires you to supply energy. All right, and the fact is you have to supply that extra energy. All right, so let's do one more little thing. You can see some of the jittery lines. So again, another example. Look how smooth it is here. He calls this, from here to here, coasting. Now, does that look like coasting? Doesn't look like coasting to me. Okay, so this line is nice and smooth. This is supposed to be just as smooth. It's not just as smooth. Obviously, a lot of shit is happening. And the shit is really happening at the pulley. The pulley is what's changing all of this, because it's got to be converted through the pulley to be able to get to the other side. So it's just like a vibration. You can understand that if I had something vibrating, then I put a piece of rubber in between it, and I had another thing over here, that I would really dampen the vibration. So this could have a really high frequency, and all I'll get on this other side is a little slow frequency, because the rubber is going to dampen everything out. So all he did was dampen the reality, okay, to make it conform to what he wishes to propagandize for, which is essentially free energy, that you can somehow fight the force of gravity for free. You can bang into more enemy soldiers, okay, and they won't somehow stab you. It's free. They're free soldiers. Okay, just nonsense. So, enough video now, I believe.